Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here today to talk to you about this. You guys are exactly the audience for a tool like this. And so I'm assistant professor at Northwestern University. I'm in the Department of Medical Social Sciences. I've been collecting network data directly from participants for a while. In graduate school, I was doing it within schools, and in the last 6-7 years, because I've been at Northwestern, it's been more focused on collecting it from participants, asking them about sexual partners, asking them about drug partners, social connections, and trying to understand HIV and racial disparities in HIV and the social sort of drivers of that. So come into a lot of difficulties in that process of like trying to capture this data. And Network Canvas is sort of what we've come up with. And this is all very pretty, and I'll kind of get to this, but I want to spend a few minutes talking about a little bit about where we came from and how we got to where we are. And then I want to talk about the current grant. And I want to leave a lot of time so you guys can actually see the software. We have a demo prepared that is sort of what we'll be using at Sunbelt in about a week now, for those of you who are going to Sunbelt. Yeah. So let me start here. So anybody who's familiar with collecting your own network data knows that there's a lot of difficulties. One of the key ones is that how tedious it can be for participants when they are trying to fill out a lot of information about their alters or their social connections. And the size of the network increases that tedium exponentially. People start to get really smart about, if I just don't nominate more people, I'll be out of this survey faster, which is not good. And so both because it's so difficult to get this data from participants, it's costly, it takes a lot of time. There's been some innovation in how to collect this besides sort of this matrix sort of format of, does John know Mary? Does John know Bob? And that sort of thing. So one of the things that I started working with when I started collecting data directly from participants was something that Bernie Hogan and Barry Wellman and folks have put a lot of work into, and maybe some of you are familiar with participant-aided sociograms. This idea of taking sociograms and the creation of sociograms into this sort of physical world by having people nominate people onto Post-it notes, and then taking those Post-its and putting them onto like some sort of circle like canvas in order to determine where these people sort of fit around somebody's network, and then drawing lines around the alters that you nominate. Different colored lines. It's kind of cool, it's physical, it's a little bit more fun and engaging than maybe many survey items trying to assess social connections. One of the difficulties that we had when doing this was that we were interested in social ties, sexual ties, and drug ties, which meant that you had to erase those lines every time you were trying to capture a new network, which was really difficult. And then also the process of trying to get characteristics on those alters, and also on maybe the relationship ties too. So for example, when did you start having sex with that person? When did you stop having sex with that person? What kind of sexual positioning was there? All these things that are really important when we're talking about infectious disease and disease spread that need to go into our models was really difficult to specify in some of this. And the other really hard thing with this, and this is actually what we did in one of our studies, this is actual data that's been anonymized, and we did whiteboards and magnetic things, and it was great. It was 175 egocentric interviews, 3,300 alters, tons of data. It took us 1.5 years to collect this, and then it took us another 1.5 years to get it into an Access database and get it workable. And it was so painful, and it was so frustrating because it shouldn't be that difficult. And so, I kind of had it in my head that it can't be this difficult. Like, this is around when iPads were starting to become really popular, and starting to think about there has to be like some sort of way of digitizing this, and not beyond like Qualtrics or beyond something that could really make this because the physical nature of this was so beautiful and people love that, but if there's a way of making it physical for people but digital as well, that might streamline the entire process. And so the opportunity really came when this large grant was funded within my research program. This is led by Dr. Brian Stansky at Northwestern. And this is RADAR. It's a large cohort study in Chicago of young men who have sex with men, ages 16 to 29. It was started about 3 years ago. And the cool thing about this is that, so you're collecting a cohort of young men who have sex with men, following them every 6 months for over a 5-year period. And we're getting a lot of different levels of data. So traditionally, we're getting a lot of individual level risk behaviors, HIV risk behaviors, mental health, all those sorts of things that might be really typical in a lot of these studies. We're also getting network data. And we're getting network data, social network, sexual network, and drug networks, using a lot of the things that we learned in LINC and some prior studies. And then also we're getting biomedical data. So we partnered with Infectious Disease MD and in order to start including things like testing for HIV, banking that data, doing phylogenetic analysis on those who are HIV positive, on their actual infection, STIs, drug use, rectal swabs, bunch of stuff, lots of data. So, this was so, cool to be able to do this. But when it came to actually, how can we do this? Like, how can we collect network data? And there's a lot of requirements that we had for this. We had, so it has to be really easy for participants because we don't have that long with them. And they need to want to come back to us every 6 months, so we don't want them to hate us. And also, we wanted to capture a lot of data because we're taking the time to get them in here. We really don't want to pick and choose only sex partners, for example. We really want to get an idea of the entire social context around that person. So it was important for us that we were able to capture a lot of data at one time. It was also important to us to understand not just ego to alter connections, but alter to alter connections, which are so difficult to, sort of capture. And we wanted information both on the nodes and on the edges. So, this idea of like having multiple different kinds of edges and having attributes on each of those edges and attributes on the nodes themselves too. How can we do that? Also every 6 months. And so we wanted something where we could feed in data from the prior wave, and because it could streamline the process so much more if you could feed in the people that they said that they had sex with or interacted with or they nominated the last wave. And they come in and they're like, oh, are you still friends with this person? Do you want to pull them over? And all of the data that's stored on that person already is just pulled over. They don't have to re-enter all of it, which is amazing. And finally, that allows skip logic. And so, if you say that I've never done drugs, period, then you shouldn't be asked about who have you done drugs with. Things like that. Those sorts of smart sort of skip logics can shorten the interview quite a bit and make it much easier for the participant. And so this is my amazing team. And so Nash Contractor is a co-lead with me of the network core that we call us. So there's 3 cores of this RADAR project, and one of them is network data. And we also have Gregory Phillips and Pat Janulis. And then at Oxford was a real, and so this is Bernie Hogan, who was doing a lot of this participant-aided sociogram work. The cool thing was that he also had a doctoral student who was trying to basically put this onto an iPad and trying to figure out how can we capture this data. Josh's work was much more focused on doing qualitative research, not so much the quantitative data collection, but it was sort of, he sort of had a lot of these things figured out for qualitative data capture, but then trying to figure out how can we, use this within RADAR. So a lot of love, a lot of hard work by these people coming together and building something we call Network Canvasser. I'm not going to show you guys Network Canvasser today. I'm going to wait until I show you the demo at the end. But many of the things that sort of began here are very familiar in our demo and will be brought forward. But this is actually, this is it being used. This is Christian Castro, who's one of our, he's the lead interviewer. And we do all of our, well, a majority of our interviews through the Center in Halstead, which is the largest LGBT health organization in the Midwest. And and it's touch screen. And everything, all interactions are captured and by the software and computerized. So I'm going to get into that a little bit more. You guys will kind of understand, I think, a little bit in a few minutes. OK. And another really cool thing about this is that the workflow was really important, that this had to be fast. This had to, especially because it's digital, like, we need to make sure that if we have 1,000 people coming in every 6 months, like, there's no way that this can be done manually. So everything had to be automated. And so the way that the application works is that you can load in a protocol. The protocol for this study was the radar protocol for Network Canvas. And it spits out a JSON file. This JSON file is then able to be read by Python, by R, and we use something called a Neo4j graph database. I don't know if you guys are familiar, but so good for network data. It's a graph database. Data is actually stored as a graph. And by storing everything here, we can then use our in-house R package to analyze the data, to do data pulls. And it's very easy. And so from when the data is collected to when it's analyzable, it can happen the same day, which is amazing. So like last year when we went to Sunbelt, we were able to present data that had been collected like 3 days before, which is pretty amazing. Whereas before it was like a 2-year lapse. A little bit about graph databases. And so the difference between a graph database and a relational database is that in a traditional sort of relational database, this is one of the things that makes network data management so difficult, is that you're constantly fighting with your data management program trying to store different edge attributes, different alter attributes, ego attributes, and not even talking about the structural data itself. And you might have multiplex ties, and all of these things might be in different sort of documents and trying to navigate between them. So if you want to do like a very specific sort of call on, I want to know all the HIV positive people who had sex between January and March, things like that, that would take you a week to figure out how to do. Whereas in a graph database, the lovely thing about it is that the data is actually stored as a graph itself. And so it's much more flexible than trying to move between these different sheets in order to do data pulls. And so the data is actually, you can have multiple edges, you can have different types of nodes. And so it's been really lovely. So one of the major sort of innovations for us has been figuring out this back-end data structure. It took a lot of expertise that, it took us a lot of figuring out to get to this point. And as a health researcher, as a psychologist, this isn't something I ever thought I'd be getting into. But in working with like a really interdisciplinary team, I've been able to sort of get there. But it was a long, hard road. And so we have an evaluation of the software that appeared in Chi last year. This is just some of the words that people came up, like, they liked it, basically. Usability, like, some quantitative measure that we put in, people really liked it. We also looked at, the cool thing is that the same, some 60 of the same individuals who completed the participant-aided sociograms and link then completed Network Canvas. And so we were able to say that we could collect just as much, if not more, data, and in a shorter amount of time, and people liked it. So very cool. And so what that got us to was, we created all of this work over, a year and a half, basically, went into, this one software for this one UL1 cohort study. And both because a lot of people were coming to us asking, like, this is really cool. Can you do this for my study? And wanting not to say no. But then also thinking about my own research, and I don't want to do this in the future without Network Canvas or a tool like it. I don't want to collect data the old way ever again. I've been spoiled. And so it was really important for us to try to figure out how can we move to sort of the next level and figure out not necessarily, I don't think our job should be making surveys for people to do their own science. I think instead it has to be making a tool for people to build their own surveys. And so this is Network Canvas, the R01. And so when I was here last year, we had just been scored, and we actually got awarded it in July. So it's only been like 9 months or so. This is the first year of a 5-year award. And I have my beautiful quote here, which I want to brag about forever. And so the project team, a whole bunch of people, all the people that I mentioned earlier, principal investigators are myself and Gregory Phillips at Northwestern University. We have a lot of other collaborators. We have a whole development team. Joshua Melville is our lead developer and a Northwestern University employee now and not Oxford. We stole him away. And then we have Belinda Ray, who is right in the back here, and he's wearing the Network Canvas t-shirt, so you can know who he is. So he's a good contact person when I'm gone tomorrow. If you want to talk about Network Canvas, you can find him. And we also, the cool thing was too, is that we have an idea of what works, but we only have our perspective of what's worked in our very specific study. So it was important for us to get perspectives from the outside community. And so one of the ways we're doing that is by 2 different partnerships, one with Natalie Crawford at Emory University and the other with Kui Yang at Johns Hopkins University. They're both test sites for us. And so we're partnering with them early to demo the alpha builds of what we're building in their own surveys, and in their own studies. So we can learn from them what works, what doesn't work. There's also a lot of other sort of opportunities that we have for integration of feedback. I'll talk about that in a little bit. And so let me explain a little bit about how we're building this. And so the 2 parts that really weren't there before, while we had some sort of mechanism for developing protocols and then feeding the protocols into a touchscreen sort of application, one of the things that was different with the R01 is that we really wanted to make the creation of protocols really easy for social and behavioral researchers. And so you don't have to have any programming expertise, that it's super easy, super visual. And so this is the idea of the architect. And this is one of the things that we're just starting to think about speccing out and starting to create. And so in the architect, what you're going to be able to do is to build your survey. It's going to be, like we're thinking right now, it's going to look a little bit like a PowerPoint because it's like a visual screen sort of system. But kind of like, while it might visually look like PowerPoint, it's going to be like a survey monkey for network research. Whereas the difference between this like survey creation for network research is that what Network Canvas does, it's a visual sort of interface that you'll see in the demo. And then the other part that's new is this idea of server, with the data management being such a difficult aspect of network data collection. We wanted to make it really easy for there to be a graph database structure that's built based on the architecture that's built. And so that whole process is seamless, and there's the behavioral researcher doesn't have to make these kind of decisions. It's very invisible from them, and they can just collect the data at the end. And so what we want to do is that for people who have more expertise and want it, they can specify things a little bit more. They can have sort of more interaction with the data side and more ability to sort of mess with things. But for people who don't need that and don't want that, they can also export the data in a multiple different sort of file formats that fit them. Okay. So why don't I switch a little bit? Oh, real quick, I want to show a couple of the key features. And so I talked a little bit about this end-to-end workflow, this idea of having the architect, having, you build the survey in the architect, it connects to the application, which is what you give to people to give their surveys, and then the data flows into the server. So this idea that it's really this all-in-one sort of system that makes it much easier for researchers. The other thing I wanted to say is that having these really simple screens. We really believe in good design as being very important. I think that's one of the difficulties with a lot of the research software that's out there, whether it's network data collection or not. It's kind of ugly and it's kind of terrible. And it's actually, it's more painful for your participants because not only because it isn't pretty, but because they need to spend mental energy to figure out what it is that you're trying to ask them. If your survey isn't set up in an intuitive way, it takes mental energy out of them, and they're not able to sort of give 100% to your survey. So what we found is that good design is really important, and making these really intuitive protocol screens makes it so much easier to collect good data. And then finally, open science, open software. We're developing this completely open source. We have a GitHub page. Everything's there. It's linkable off of our website. And if anybody wants to take a look, if wants to contribute, it's there. OK, I'm going to switch a little bit now. Let's see. So, yay, it worked. OK, so this is our demo. And so this is Network Canvas. And so this is the application, and it is feeding in a protocol that we've developed specifically for our demo. And this demo is based on the GSS, so some of it might look very familiar to you. So you're not going to be able to see me pushing buttons, but I'm using the touch screen right now. So one of the first things that you can capture within this is attributes about the respondent. It's not built for that, but you can do that. It's very easy. And so there might be some things like, for example, in Radar, we collect some demographics, and that helps inform the skip flow logic later on. So if it's a male or a follow-up participant or something like that, the protocol is going to be a little bit different. In here with the GSS, we're interested in knowing about the group or organization membership that you are a member of. So I've kind of filled this out a little bit already, but you can fill out whatever. The next step with network research is name generators. So I filled this out a little bit already, and these are auto-generated names, so they're super weird, just so you know. John, and let's say 44, set relationship roles, and okay. And which of these groups does this person belong to? Service groups, veterans group, political groups. Let's say that one. And there's John. So that's your name generator. So once you load your individuals into the name generator, you can then pull from them at later stages and ask more questions about them. So I'm going to move on. So then we draw a sociogram. And so it looks very similar to some of the participant-aided sociogram work that was not electronic. And so all of the nodes appear up here in the corner, and then you just drag them. And the instructions that we give people is to drag people to where they tend to know people. So do these people tend to know each other? Do these people tend to know each other? The nice thing about that is that it kind of gives people some sort of visual landmark when they're answering questions about them later on, that they can say, OK, I need to indicate who I've used drugs with. This is all my family. I haven't used drugs with any of them, but I've used drugs with a couple of these people and maybe some of these people. So it makes it, again, a little bit faster to answer questions. Another thing we do is we really are careful about only asking one thing per screen, because it just takes the cognitive load off of that person. So all we're asking here is just laying out. That's it. And then I'm just going to the next screen. And then we're going to start creating links between alters. We have a lovely little GIF there that's showing you how to do that. And I've preloaded this already. But it's as easy as touching somebody and creating some links. And here, this is draw a line between people who are especially close to each other. You can see down here. And we can do different kinds of ties. Now it says, please draw a line between people who work together or interact professionally. So let's say that John works with both of these people. Another thing that, besides the sociogram, which is so fabulous, another really hard part about collecting information is social network information is because you're trying to answer so many questions about so many people. And so I think our interfaces help quite a bit when it comes to collecting that kind of data. So the way that this works is that all individuals appear on top of each other right there. And then we just ask the participant to go through and to say which one. And this is an ordinal bin, so it's pretty easy to understand. We apply good HCI practices. And so we try to make this as easy for people as possible with color. If somebody wants to change something, they can. It won't break anything. If you need to move in between stages or screens, you can. It's not going to break anything. So if you remember, like, to add people, you can go back to the beginning and then add them again. You just have to go through the items again, but you only have to answer about the person that you added. So it's actually very quick. So we're collecting a ton of data. I'm going to go back real quick and just show you. So this is a categorical bin. So this is just gender that we do. So now geospatial data, which is another really complicated thing to collect. And so it's very easy to put maps in here. So in Chicago, what we've actually done is we've put the Chicagoland area, and we've put some sort of key landmarks, especially like the L tracks or the train tracks, because that's how people orient themselves around the city. And then we have census data. So we have the census tracts actually embedded in the map. And we ask, your best understanding, where do these people live? Here for the GSS, especially because we're going to be in China, we wanted to have a world map. And so right now we just have countries as organized by, so pretty easy. The only thing is that right now you just need to have internet access in order to produce the tiles. The last thing, which is really cool, so this is something we didn't do at all within Radar, but this is really coming from Josh and a lot of his DPhil work, is qualitative data. And being able to have a network in front of people that you can both interact with and share, record audio, and understand what's going on. So some of the things that he has here is you can sort of highlight certain things in these qualitative interviews. And then you can circle and X people out. And another cool thing is this feature of highlighting. I don't know if you can see, but the nodes, you can make them start to glow. As your interview goes on, you'll see that things start to disappear. So it automatically sort of refreshes. And it's like a lovely tool for doing these kind of interviews. You can set presets. And so you can change the node attributes by node attributes. So the color or size. Yeah, to give you a sense of, these are some of the protocols that we're working on. One of the last things I want to show you is I just want to show you that you can download data. So currently we have two different formats that you can download. You can download the JSON or you can download GraphML. I'm just going to download the GraphML really quick. And I'm just going to quit it. As I pull this up, I want to know if people have questions. And I'll pull up the GraphML. Yeah. I'm sorry, say that one more time. The node itself? So what you're doing is you are selecting for the node. Like, so we aren't dragging a node and placing it, but that is what you're doing. The question at the bottom asks, for John Doe, where do they live? So that is what you're doing, but we don't have that as like the visual that you're dragging a node and placing it any place. Do you have feedback about that? Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. So I just want to show that this is the data that we just pulled. And it's analysis ready. Yeah. Yeah. It's a JSON file, and it's a JavaScript file, and it's a nice structured sort of file. It's easy to like read with Python, for example. So that's what we do. It might be a little bit higher technical expertise than a lot of folks who do this kind of work, but we do have it as an option. But but I'm kind of guessing that other file types might be most useful for researchers that we're trying to target. Yeah, I'm seeing lots of shaking heads. Yeah. Other thoughts? Yeah, John.
Thought and question. The thought is JSON files are compatible with R.
Mm-hmm.
So learning R-based things. It's not that much. Well, we'll see at the end of the week. The question I have
Yeah.
is I see this file, but what if I just want like a CSV or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. The hard thing with the CSV is if you have a lot of attributes, then it's like, what do you actually include in? Because it doesn't, GraphML is at least nice because you can include quite a bit of attributes. And, but yeah, absolutely. That means like the structural data would be very easy to include. The only other thing I'll sort of say, we are doing a lot of outreach. Like a big focus of this grant is that we're trying to do this in collaboration with the community. And so one of the ways is through going to conferences. We're going to Sunbelt. If anybody's there, please come see us. We're going to be doing a focus group and a demo on June 3rd in one of the hotel suites within the conference. You might see us at some public health conferences too. Our website is being built right now, but it's networkcanvas.com. Please check it out. There's a listserv. Please sign up. And just keep in touch with us. Soon there's going to be a community forum feedback. And so we really want there to be good interaction with the community and the community to interact with itself too, not just with us, but we really want to start building a community for this tool because we might not be around after our grant maybe, but we want to make sure that this lives on. And so it's important for us to incorporate the community as much as possible. So please keep an eye on that. We're also doing online focus groups. Some of our folks from the Duke workshop last year actually did a focus group with me a few weeks ago. And we also have a yearly survey you guys might have seen. Some of you might have participated. We had over 100 individuals who've completed. One of the major things was that everybody kind of hates doing network research, or like it's very difficult to create network instruments. It's hard to analyze it. It's lots of complaints. But the network community is very supportive, was like one of the feedbacks of that, which I thought was really great. Sustainment, we're always looking for other sorts of spin-out grants from NIH, and we have a lot of things sort of in the hopper that we're hoping are going to hit soon. And we really want that, again, strong community involvement. And I think that's pretty much it. Thank you, guys. And I have stickers. So if anybody's a really big network nerd and wants stickers or wants to do a demo with me, feel free to stick around after this. And if you want to play with it on my computer, or just come find me sometime. Or talk to Belinda, who's in the back of the room. Thanks.